Why hello there, dear viewer. Today's video is not necessarily about an author tuber or some kind of channel awesome reject or both. It's gonna be about YouTube drama. Hooray for me. All over the interwebbing of online social media, everyone and their mama is talking about one specific thing right now. Why didn't Steven Crowder take the $50 million when I would blow a dude for $5? This kind of question is exactly what's wrong with society right now. We have a lack of dignity online, which is surprising with how many people refrain from throwing their dirty laundry and personal fetishes out for everyone to see, myself included. Something like telling people what sexual position you prefer, or which of the characters in The Lion King you'd love to do it like they do on the Discovery Channel with, is part of what we call principles, or rather a lack of conflict with our principles. Principles are a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior, or for a chain of reasoning. In other words, if your principle is my personal business is for myself and those I personally am involved with, then that is what you believe is fundamental to stick to, and you do this through reasoning. You find a truth to it. If you believe anyone can know you like something like big Asian butts because you find it funny and something worth promoting, especially on a channel about aesthetics, but you just don't share it with someone like grandma while she's eating her lasagna, then that is also a principle, because this comes from a form of reasoning that is then to be declared as a fundamental truth about your belief system. Just because one person doesn't want to share at all, doesn't mean everyone else has to follow the same principles to have them be principles. Speaking of beautiful butt cheeks, in twerks actual justice warrior, also known as Sean Fitzgerald. He is a criminal justice YouTuber I have admired for a long time, and I haven't really seen a video where I could say I disagree, other than the reasoning behind why he talk about TYT so much. I get it, there's money involved and they are his locale. So he's sticking to the principle of, I'm gonna make fun of TYT to make money on YouTube. Honestly, I wish more people were criminal justice YouTubers, just so we can have more people to ask about how these damn rules work. It's also a bit comforting to hear people talk like lawyers while goofing around like Fletcher Reed. Hey, that's the guy from Liar Liar. How appropriate that we're going to reference that Jim Carrey movie since Sean came out with a recent video talking about how a Canadian lied about his financial statement that the Daily Wire gave him. If you're out of the loop because this is something that you never cared for, Steven Crowder is a conservative YouTuber who has about 6 million subs. He grew to that size by being a quote-unquote comedian, and I am using that term rather loosely. His comedy is meant to be edgy, that's a given, but we at the Dirty Lore House are still unable to determine if making people laugh was intended or possible with his humor. So we will label it as comedy in the same way that the Big Bang Theory is labeled that way. Bazinga! By the way, if you're an anti-woke artist who loves to talk about YouTube media or aesthetics, feel free to join our subreddit to join in on the small conversation that sparks whenever the mods get free time, or are up all night because they ate too much fried chicken with Mountain Dew. Back to the subject, Crowder is appealing. His Change My Mind segments are addicting and fascinating to a lot of people, and there is a profit to be made from this kind of celebrity. He worked for a company called The Blaze, and he is now a free agent, open for another company to take his company, Louder with Crowder, under their wing, or he flies on his own. Crowder has been making less and less videos due to health problems and constant strikes against his channel from YouTube, as well as demonetization. He hasn't been monetized in the longest time thanks to a Socialism is for Figs t-shirt controversy that was tied to Carlos Pasta. It's like a creepypasta, only instead of Jeff the Killer, it involves Hefe the Kumar. So in short, Crowder is edgy and doesn't care about what he says when it comes to comedy. Comedy comes first, and with comedy comes freedom of speech because comedy is meant to be offensive. And monetization be damned if they want to take away such a thing. This is why he started something called Mug Club, where he is able to make money from viewers who are willing to donate to him in a Patreon-style way, minus the Patreon fees. The amount he makes from Mug Club is a bit up in the air, but considering that he has 6 million subs on YouTube alone and they are mostly active, the support for him to do stuff with his company means Crowder could have some kind of support in the millions of people or dollars. These are potential numbers, not exact, and it depends on what Crowder could do, not just on what he has done. In my personal opinion, what really holds him back are the skits. They are not necessary for anything, not really entertaining, and make him look like a slightly more expensive version of the Channel Awesome reviewer. It's not my thing, but for some reason he finds a profit in it. Either that or he is trying really hard to get demo reels to relive his child actor days. Now that you're caught up with that, we will begin the actual subject where a highly respectable YouTuber named Sean kept saying that Crowder lied. But what exactly did Crowder lie about? Let's find out. It's a 41-minute video, so I'm sure it's chock full of debunking.
So wrong about this or that. Well, turns out that's not the case. Turns out almost every point that I made was vindicated on this show, and that's what we're going to talk about today, plus a few other things related to the Daily Wire's shady business practices that I also want to talk about.
Sean is referencing his previous video on the matter where he made 4 points Crowder is wrong. 1. The fines. We'll get deeper into that one later. 2. Licensing of previous, current, and future content made by Crowder. This one involves Shadversity during a livestream with Sitch and Adam, which we'll get into. 3. It is about the money. And 4. Negotiations. What's weird is that these 4 points only made up about half of that previous hour-long video, with the rest of it that followed just being Sean going, "Steven's a bad guy and a liar," over and over again for 30 minutes. So if the lying is such a big issue, let's see what the lies are about.
Because Crowder basically owned up to everything, whether he wanted to or not, emphasis on or not, that I pointed out in my video. Now, I said repeatedly, yes, this is about the money. Yes, Steven Crowder counteroffered. I believe the Daily Wire, I believe Jeremy Boring, when he said Crowder counteroffered, because it made perfect sense for him to counteroffer. And at certain points during the podcast, Steven Crowder admitted that his agent likely submitted a counteroffer.
There was never any counteroffer from us.
So there was no counteroffer, because I'm seeing a lot of you guys say...
There was the agent, I think my agent, they sent this term sheet. The agent said, well, if you're talking about 100% ownership, by the way, in perpetuity forever, meaning it's a 6-year contract, with no option to negotiate. They have an option to extend for 2 years. 6 years, locked in at that rate.
Well, they're accusing you of counteroffering.
Then we can talk about the money, right? He said they came in low, and I'm sure my gay Cuban hardcore right-wing agent came in high. You find that, but it's like, but there can't be any terms without this.
They came in low. My agent, who's half Cuban, likely came in high. And again, this is obvious.
I understand this is confusing, this is a mess of words, and Crowder is trying to do a Ben Shapiro and is talking too fast for his brain. I understand his pain because I speak fast and I had to slow myself down. This is the problem when someone is jazzed up on too much Mountain Dew and coffee. When he says there was no counter offer from us, he's referring to himself and the freakishly large giant guy he's sitting next to. He's referring to people in the room, because that was the context. Later, he says that his agent probably counted high. He tries to get a few jokes in to make a boring subject less boring. They fail. But the key word here is still probably. He's trying to give information while not being sure, and he doesn't know because his agent handled it for him. I don't know if Sean has ever dealt with an agent before, but usually they don't say much because they want to handle the dealing without a celebrity getting involved in deals. Celebrities get agents so that a negotiator can perform a business transaction and benefit the client they are servicing. The agent has the goal of doing things a celebrity may or may not want to do. For example, if I, a writer, get a literary agent, I would want to use them to get me a publisher, like how Crowder wanted a producer to reduce a lot of risk. Even if I have a bunch of money, the publisher would be a form of networking, because then the audience bases are merging together and that means easier promotion. There is a benefit to something like this, even if I think I can do it on my own and make the same amount of money. Let's say I am not sure how much I'm actually worth. The agent's job is to highball me to make both of our pay higher, because the agent is usually paid commission or some kind of percentage if it's not a flat rate. If they are being paid and how much they get credited for a contract, that agent would totally highball an offer. If the agent is simply one who likes to highball because they are known to, they would totally highball an offer. None of this means Crowder is involved in the highballing, because that's the agent, not Crowder. Crowder is not his agent. For whatever reason, Sean assumed Crowder is his own agent, and the only reason he would do that is if he wasn't sure about the context of the statement, or if he was lying, or if he was trying too hard to accuse Crowder of lying. So far on the Crowder meter, no lies detected.
Boring wanted Crowder to redline the contract. Crowder wanted a completely new offer. I believe that this is the sequence of events, how it went down.
He wanted a different offer, yes. One where the penalties are not as severe, where they take away 100% of a salary due to boycotts.
What kind of a headspace would you have to be in to walk away full stop from $50 million? What would it take for you to be willing to walk away from at least $50 million because of it causing harm to someone else that doesn't even affect you?
Now I ask you, does that make sense, knowing now from Steven Crowder's own mouth that his agent felt like he was lowballed and then he highballed the Daily Wire?
This is a terrible point that sparked me to make this video because Sean repeats this over and over again, especially in his debate with Shadversity over the issue. For some reason, when Crowder says, "I didn't want to accept the contract because it gives penalties against my company," meaning him and his employees, and this is also a contract that punishes new and upcoming talents in the same manner, Sean then looks at that and goes, "Well, why did your agent highball an offer then? Clearly it's about the money." Let's get into exactly what Crowder means by penalties. In the financial statement, there is a penalty for ad drops and YouTube strikes. A YouTube strike is when you say something that is supposedly against the TOS on YouTube and your video is demonetized. This can range from having copyrighted material to being a slightly violent creepypasta. Seriously, people get demonetized and age restricted for reading some creepypastas that just talk about blood or a dead body. This means that if I were to join Daily Wire and narrate a violent story that I wrote myself and someone decided to report it for violence or whatever they want to use as a mass flag, then I would lose 25% of my salary with Daily Wire for a creepypasta. I cannot stress this enough. This is a horrific business model for Daily Wire, and this is what they will offer to new up-and-coming talents. I accepted the stupidest offers when I was in my early 20s. I couldn't imagine how desperate someone would be if they came to working for something like Daily Wire and making political content. Most of the people they hire are women. They don't know how to negotiate. Good luck getting a raise at DW, ladies, other than the raise a middle finger Ben gives you as he eats his bagel by the water cooler. But that's not all. Another 25% for ad drops. If the horrible brands like Bitch Gold don't want you to advertise with them, that's a quarter of his salary gone. You know, now that I think of it, I kinda noticed something. You never hear Daily Wire advertise ovens or shower heads. I never hear of a Kohler or Frigidaire commercial from them. Maybe it's hard to get Ben to smile when he's talking about them, I don't know. But what I do know is that Sean misses the point completely in order to claim it's about money. The problem is that Crowder is saying, I would like to make money with my company and keep my principles. Daily Wire says, screw your principles, it's profit first. They might as well put a bank on yourself ad in their financial statement with that kind of mentality. But as you can see, the Daily Wire demands their YouTubers to remain monetization friendly. You're not allowed to review something like a movie with movie footage or a song with too much of the song, or read a creepypasta that's too violent. I don't expect them to make any creepypastas about political stuff, but I'm sure someone like Matt Walsh could write a quick story about Joe the Sniffer. Sean doesn't want to understand that these are two contradictory business models, because Crowder doesn't care about the monetization and doesn't want other people to be punished with a 25% penalty for having stuff that causes strikes. Crowder faced that for years, practically required to release a video once every 3 months at one point because he was hit with 2 strikes and had to wait for the 90-day grace period in case a third one was primed and ready. Crowder featured Alex Jones on his show. That was something that instantly pissed off YouTube because Alex was depersoned by every social media outlet all at once. Crowder is not one who follows the rules, which is why Tim Pool himself with Blake from Workaholics says that he's a rogue and Daily Wire are paladins. The rogue is more like chaotic neutral and paladins are forced to be lawful good, with good here meaning that they follow the rules and don't want to get in trouble. The most roguish person on Daily Wire is probably Matt Walsh, unless Andrew Clavin is sharing hentai under an alt account. He might be horny on main, but it depends on what gets an old bone a-poppin'. But even then, Matt is nowhere near as edgy or risque as Crowder because Crowder is willing to feature Alex, and is willing to make t-shirts about bundles and whatever he did on election night that knocked his stream offline. As we can see, Matt keeps up his videos, and I assume they are monetized. If they are not monetized and Matt is suffering the penalty, that's something Matt is probably fine with, meaning it's not within his principles to complain. The most spiciest takes we ever get from someone like Walsh and Knowles and Clavin and Ben, or whichever goofy women they hired, is them questioning what is a woman and being gay is a religious sin. The farthest they go is something religious or something libertarian in the most milquetoast way possible. There's never a hard question for them because they stick to the rules, and they are more than happy to stay in such a safe line. Crowder wants to make fun of stuff like races and feature people like Alex because he doesn't care. The comedy and speech comes first, even if he didn't say anything funny. Seriously, the only thing I remember actually laughing at that wasn't a polite chuckle was when Alex was supposed to play a woman because it's a big gruff Texan with a beard saying he's a woman. Sadly, I don't remember what episode that was or how long ago. I'm not even sure that even happened. But I was able to find a video from 6 years ago where Alex was on the show and Crowder was pretending to be Sinky Uyghur from The Young Turds. I can't believe that Crowder was doing 6 years ago what Sean is still doing to this day, which is making fun of TYT. I'm actually most surprised that TYT even has a fan base that isn't made up of their own employees.
No, f*** you, you're yelling! You're the unreasonable one! F*** you!
Yeah, you're yelling fat
On top of that, I also was very, very sketched out by Jeremy Boring saying that Steven Crowder promised that he could deliver 350,000 paid subscribers day one. Well, guess what? In this podcast, Steven Crowder actually said it. He said the 350,000 number, and the metric that they use to determine that this number is real is ridiculous.
Okay, Sean, let's get ready for that ridiculous measurement in the meantime, since we still haven't heard a lie from Crowder.
So some quick maths, 350,000 subscribers at $10 a month equals $42 million a year. $42 million a year. Crowder was offered $12.5 million total, and that includes his production budget from the Daily Wire. Of course, he asked for more money. If he actually believes this number, it makes perfect sense for him to ask for bare minimum a guaranteed $30 million. So these are just facts.
Sean, already you're making it complicated and wrong. It's not $10 a month, it's $100 a year. You go by year with Mug Club. That means every year he'd be able to bring in $35 million, which means in 4 years it can go up to $140 million from Mug Club alone, meaning the deal they offer to him of $50 million is insanely low. That's a third of what he's promising to bring in. Now, I don't disagree with Sean's math exactly, since we're coming to the same conclusion, just looking at it with a different equation. He's filling up the blackboard with scribbles and I'm doing it on a napkin. The problem I have is that there isn't proof of a ridiculous measurement. This just hammers in the fact that Crowder's agent should have highballed a number that was dramatically lower than what he could have brought in. Also, there's a lot of stuff that the Daily Wire could use through these 4 years to help with production that Crowder could maybe not do with $35 million a year. He could make a movie with their help, he could make a documentary, he could go to more colleges and have speeches and the like. He'd be paying for networking, and the last thing he'd want to do is get penalties for something he was already penalized for, all while giving his Mug Club money to the Daily Wire. You know, I really hate the word Mug Club. It sounds like I'm saying the words Krusty the Clown was talking about, and that sounds funny, in The Simpsons.
It's words that sound dirty, like muckluck.
Because of course it's the money. Of course the money is important. Of course Crowder counteroffered. He would be an idiot to not counteroffer. This is why I knew, and I say knew for a fact, that this was incredibly disingenuous.
What kind of a headspace would you have to be in to walk away full stop from $50 million?
What Crowder is saying here is that he'd rather do this entire endeavor on his own instead of be under the thumb of the Daily Wire, while getting less money for less production, and especially since he'd be paying for his own productions. Again, the stuff Daily Wire would help out with is Daily Wire stuff. I remember Alex Jones said that every airing of his show cost $1 million to do, and I am amazed at how expensive producing a political show is in order to simply have someone speak in front of a camera and say the news. It's insane how expensive this kind of stuff is, and it's admirable for someone like Crowder to say, I don't want your money, I'll do it on my own, and even if I took your offer, I'd produce my own episodes. If you think Alex has something like a skeleton crew working to air his comedic come-to-rendu, then Crowder's episodes must take about $1 million each episode as well. The only way for him to make profit from an episode, where he has to make an episode for 4 days a week, meaning he has to make like 190 or so episodes, that means to break even with $12.5 million a year, he could only spend about $63K per episode. And that's to barely break even. All the employees, all the equipment and payments, maybe even to pay his lawyer, all the skits that nobody likes, all the fees and arranging things for something like Change My Mind, any guest who had to be paid to be featured, all the flights and Uber costs, that would come out of Crowder's wallet. It sounds like a lot of money to the average Joe, but to the showbiz people, that's chump change. I have no idea how much Daily Wire or Crowder spends on each episode that goes live, but this stuff doesn't come cheap, and Crowder wants a producer for a reason. And this is all if he doesn't get hit by any penalty. Sean takes the words, it's not about the money, as, I don't mind going broke as long as I have free speech. Crowder's not an idiot, and that's a horrible bad faith interpretation that Sean is doing, if that's how he sees it. The only way to say what Sean is accusing Crowder of is if Sean sees it that way. Not everyone is willing to be a martyr, especially when other people's livelihoods are on the line and Crowder has a family he wants to house and feed. Sean is taking the term "it's not about the money" in such a ridiculous way, and I can't understand why the irony is beyond him. This is out of character for someone like Sean. He's usually rational and of sound mind and takes things in good faith. He usually goes for the more logical route when people say things rather than a terrible straw man. But so far, only for this one single event, the Crowder conspiracy, this is where he lets his elephant take over and run the show. There is some kind of anger or bias against Crowder during the situation, and I don't know what is causing it. We might find out later, because Sean mentioned some women that nobody cares about, but so far the only way to make sense of what Sean is saying is if we assume Sean is intentionally being bad faith to manipulate the phrase, it's not about the money. That, or he's been on Twitter for a bit too long and he's become victim to the brainworms.
The bully tactics that take place behind the scenes of other creators, and knew it wouldn't be myself. So now the narrative shifts to, how could you record a phone call, betray a friend? Well, hold on a second. It was just about money. It was just, this is just business, and now it's, hey, we're really good friends. Well, which is it?
Crowder is 100% correct here. Daily Wire, after being given a counteroffer from Crowder's agent, decided it was a good idea to gaslight everyone after Crowder took the failed negotiation public. Crowder didn't get a second offer because Daily Wire knew their goose was cooked, and they weren't willing to budge on the penalties that Crowder already was a victim of. They didn't see a profit from Crowder because they weren't sure about the Mug Club money, which isn't a lie, it's just up in the air, and they didn't want Crowder to question the entirety of the penalties for Crowder and future talent. That's the key issue, the future talent. Because Crowder's team and his agent, and Crowder himself, wanted the Daily Wire to change their business model for Crowder to join. That wasn't going to happen, and Mr. Boring was not happy that principles were to come before profit. This is where Crowder talks about the gaslighting because even Ben Shapiro got involved and said that Crowder was a bad person for not taking the deal.
And tape his friends on the phone and then release that public. Who does that? Who does that? Who go out of our way to make offers to people for tens of millions of dollars so they can continue to promote, to provide the content that you want. Tens of millions of dollars to people like Steven Crowder. So what's his claim on that? His claim is that we're shilling for big tech by saying that if you get banned from YouTube and we lose money because of that, then you also lose money. Well, I noticed that someone else makes the vast bulk of his living via the exposure he receives on YouTube, and his name is Steven Crowder. Steven has a bigger following on YouTube than I do. The demonetization does not mean that he doesn't indirectly make money on YouTube. The exposure he receives on YouTube allows him to push people to Mug Club, to push people to Mug Club. To push people to Mug Club.
Apparently, following the woke media of YouTube to get monetized is being a good business person, but saying I can't do that because I was already demonetized, so maybe we should change some things to sell more products that people can use, means that Crowder knows nothing about business. Crowder has made the same example over and over again. Just make more stuff like Jeremy's razors. Make stuff conservatives would buy. Shoes, work pants, man purses, fanny packs, Bible gun holsters, chastity belts, pin-up calendars with blonde women wearing cowboy hats, and of course, chewing tobacco. There's a massive smorgasbord of stuff you can sell to conservatives, and we'll eat it up if it's designed for us. You can't just stop at mattresses sold by someone else and meat that's delivered to your door. However, it's not a bad idea to have Matt Walsh's mattresses with the slogan, "You know what you're sleeping with?" Daily Wire was offended that Crowder would suggest such a horrific thing. Jeremy Boring, the guy behind Jeremy's Razors, didn't like the idea of making money outside of sponsors and YouTube ad rev. Oh, but they're more than happy to make a chinchilla kids show that's just a bunch of noise.
Point being, they make him this offer. This is the business transaction. They have the counter offer, which Crowder admits to submitting. He weaselly tried to say, oh, maybe his agent did it.
10 minutes in, and Sean has given us 0 lies, but there's plenty of meandering to go about. Especially with stuff Sean agrees with. I'm having trouble understanding what exactly Sean disagrees with here because he says, I'm gonna show you a lie. And then after Crowder speaks, he goes, I agree with Crowder, but someone else did something and I don't know what is true or false here. It's kind of hard to call this an expose video when Sean can only say, I don't know, or I agree. The closest thing to a disagreement Sean has so far is that he didn't like that Crowder said, it's not about the money. And as we've already covered, it requires a ridiculous amount of bad faith to rearrange the meaning to how Sean did.
I don't see how any logical thinking person cannot draw a line, cannot draw the delineation between the things that happened during the business negotiation and calling somebody a month after you register a domain called stopbigcon.com under the guise of a personal conversation that you've known for 10 years, talking to that person about family and Christmas, and then going off on this sanctimonious rant about how it's not about you, it's about the next generation, just to generate a clip of them saying something bad and not even getting anything out of it.
Figure 14, Lauren Chen said that this is weird trick to Boring into a trap. Stop right there, sweet cheeks. 1. Nobody cares about what Lauren Chen thinks. If you care about the opinion of a woman, that's a you problem. 2. Crowder made a domain called StopBigCon to StopBigCon. Yes, guilty as charged. He entered a big con. He didn't like the big con. He wanted to counter it to let people know of a predatory practice. You yourself don't like how the financial statement was made. And then you look at this going, but something is odd here. Crowder must be a bad person for agreeing with me, but actually caring about the next generation. As for tricking Boring into a trap, that's on Boring for accepting the call. If he is gullible enough to see a guy make a domain called StopBigCon, and this was after he just rejected a talent bigger than his company could pay to hire, and Crowder's agent let him know that his company had a terrible model that followed woke nonsense for money, and they should change to be more capitalist in a create a product for people to buy kind of way, then why is anyone surprised Crowder asked him anything about it at all? Taping a person while talking business for something that's already out in the open, because Crowder didn't say names but Daily Wire exposed themselves as a big con in question, is not a bad thing. The only reason you could say this is a bad thing is if you've never done it yourself or if you do it to create false incriminating evidence. Nothing in the recording was false evidence. The worst thing that we could say about Crowder is that he took the term wage slaves too harshly and twisted it a bit, but even then what Boring was talking about when he says wage slaves is that the new talent should be punished for being under their wing so that the Daily Wire can make a profit and then the new talent can go off on their own with the subs that they gained while under their wing. To make a comparison, it's kind of like paying for a flight so that you can do business in a new country. However, this is like if the flight was 4 years long and you were charged anytime you abuse your bathroom privileges or tried to get a bit too much legroom. Whether we want to say it was a joke or take it to the extreme, it's still a terrible model to declare as a good thing, because it's accepting that it's predatory. And it's only a good look for Crowder because he's actually trying to clean up this libertine nonsense that the supposed centrists and right-wingers tried to advocate for. Right-wingers and conservatives are not supposed to sell their soul to the devil for money. We have some books about that if you didn't know. But it's fascinating for me how something like atheism can ruin a person's mind in this way. And I'm not sure if Sean is an atheist, but boy howdy does he love to feature the radical ones on his Discord. It's safe to say that Sean doesn't believe in God or follow a theistic religion because he's from New York. When it comes to God, he says, forget about it, passa the gabagoo before I give you the bop and the babini. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how New Yorkers sound. I only know what they say from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, so I assume they all talk like Tobey Maguire or J.J. Jameson.
You serious?
But my point is that actually religious people like Crowder care more about the principles, and the atheists can't stop talking about the money. I've typed it out on my subreddit, and I'll say it here. If I had the choice and the ability to just be a writer with a laptop and I lived in a Buddhist monastery with nothing but an orange robe, I'd do it. I can't do it in a monastery because they don't have anything to plug in the charger, but you get my point. Material stuff doesn't matter to the religious people. The spiritual matters more. Atheists and fake believers complain that the religious and conservative people are evil and greedy, and we have too much money. And the answer is, yeah, because we do stuff people like and they give us money. The hopeless atheists can't wrap their head around this because they're trapped into limited stuff like scientific and numeric thinking. They care about the profit first because the principles they hold aren't really there. There is no baseline for a principle in the material mind. This is why if I say someone's atheist, I can't understand how they are right-wing or conservative. If there is no baseline or truth to a principle, because there is no God or spiritual entity to be a source of truth, then their principles mean nothing other than social pressures and etiquette that they think is socially acceptable. Americans always seem aimless because of this lack of actual principles, and this is why Americans are quick to sell their souls to the devil. They don't find a benefit to conserving. This is why the US became so progressive in the first place, due to it being started by deists and transitioned into a godless country. Yes, there were a lot of Christian-styled people, mostly deists, who were founding fathers, but as we can see, that went away with them. We cannot fix this problem where we just go, it's okay to put profit before principles. This is because now the left and the woke own the money of the country. All these corporations that are telling us that we will eat bugs, we will own nothing, we can't own a car, we shouldn't use oil, that there should be some social credit system, and everyone is now living under their debt-based system of finances. All of this is caused by people who want to own you and remove your individualism to turn you into another cog in the machine and another child sacrificed to Moloch. Perfect example, abortion clinics. Is it okay for an abortion clinic to remove a principle just because they make a profit? If they say that life is valuable and then they take a life, is that a good or bad thing? Why should the money go before the life of a human being? These are important questions to ask ourselves before we can foolishly state that profit always comes first.
What is the point of having a contract negotiation that automatically deducts 25% of your pay? Do you really think that the Daily Wire, who are savvy business people, would be able to get Steven Crowder, a premium talent with representation, to sign on to a deal that immediately deducts a quarter of his income day one? Obviously, this is not the case, not to mention the fact that we have Candace Owens talking about how Facebook, which demonetized her, was also in the offer sheet, and she had that stricken from there.
I got the same stuff that made no sense. You'd say, just like you said, this makes no sense because I'm already demonetized from YouTube. That was my circumstance for Facebook. They had a thing about demonetization for Facebook. My lawyer went back and said, Candace is already demonetized on Facebook. And they went, oh, that's right. Strike it from the clause.
1. Nobody cares about what Candace Owens says because she's a woman. If you care what a woman says, that's a you problem. 2. Crowder is not Candace. I know they might look similar, they both have the same hair color and muscular builds, but I assure you, Crowder is not Candace. Candace accepted the deal by removing the Facebook penalty. Crowder didn't only care about the Facebook penalties. He wanted to get rid of all of the penalties and change the entire model. He did this because he's a diva who thinks he's worth enough for Daily Wire to change their ways. And he's probably not wrong, since he's bigger than nearly all of DW's biggest stars. This is like if a small indie film studio was able to sign Brad Pitt to a star in a movie full of nobodies. You're damn right he's gonna make some suggestions. Again, where is the lie? The only lie is that Sean thought Crowder rejected the statement for the same reason Candace did, and he assumed DW replied back after the first rejection through Crowder's agent.
You could say you don't believe her and all of that, but in reality, one argument makes way more sense and the other just doesn't.
It's not that I don't believe her, it's that 1, I don't care what a woman says, and 2, this is comparing apples to pickles. You're not even saying ballsack. That's a saying, right? Ballsack? I'm a bit out of the loop these days. I don't know what's the kids are memeing anymore since Joey's World Tour YouTube poops were a thing.
But weirdly, on Timcast IRL, he went from the accurate 85% number to the 110% number.
It's if you get banned, you lose X percent. And
no matter how much you're making.
45.
No matter how much you're making,
No.
and no matter how much you lose.
Yeah.
If you lose $0, they penalize you.
And the penalties add up to 110%.
It's not about the percentage. It's the fact that they will make a penalty because the Daily Wire said in their own video that they want to make money. This is why the 85% number that Sean keeps saying makes no sense to me. And we'll go over that right now. So Crowder says his total penalty would be 110% if we remove things like the monetization thing. If Crowder is banned from everything and can't make them money because he doesn't produce stuff, he would owe Daily Wire the value of 10% of his remaining salary. For example, if he was to be paid $100K in a month, he would instead owe DW $10K every month and not be paid. This makes sense to me because DW would have to put in an investment for the Crowder company with things like advertising and networking and whatever, meaning they would at least want some of that money back. If nothing is coming from Crowder, but they still have to maintain stuff, he might as well be given a fee for causing them to bleed money from his activity. The 110% number makes sense. Sean thinks it's 85%, meaning if Crowder can't do anything for DW, they will still pay him 15% of his salary for whatever reason. So let me get this straight, Sean. You think DW would be willing to pay Crowder $7.5 million over the course of 4 years to do absolutely nothing? That is the possible number he would be making if your estimate was correct, meaning DW is not only a charity for Crowder at that point, but then DW would be lying about wanting profit.
If your show begins to lose money, you also lose money. This is how business works. This is how the media works. This is how capitalism works. We are not communists. We do not pay people in order to not generate revenue. We do not pay people in order to not generate revenue. We do not pay people in order to not generate revenue.
Apparently, when it comes to negotiating, they're all about profit, and that's a good thing. But then when it comes to hiring someone to do nothing, they are willing to take $7.5 million of a risk that will be zero profit for them? Remember, Sean says that his number makes sense. So to him, it makes sense that a company all about profit will be willing to not make profit, as their strenuous lowball offer that's intended to be rejected on top of that. If Sean is correct, then Crowder's words about rejecting the $50 million is in an entirely new light. Instead, it would be like, what kind of headspace do you have to be in to reject $7.5 million to sit on your ass all day and eat hoagies? If Sean's number was right, the only thing Crowder lied about was how he omitted the ability to get paid to do nothing and piss off every social media outlet. All from Daily Wire's pocket. Number of actual lies detected from Crowder? Still 0.
Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it definitely was like 110%. Was that Crowder claims that the Daily Wire is taking ownership of everything he produces, not only during the contractual term, but the stuff that he built prior to that. And Crowder said it multiple different times, and this is just not true.
Don't sign this. Certainly not without professional legal counsel representation. Do not sign something that includes, let me go through this. Effectively, full ownership of all your social media platforms, channels, in perpetuity, the rights to your content name, image, likeness, even the ones that you've built. The challenge is like there's completely controlling contracts, right, that own your name, image, likeness, and your platforms that you already built in perpetuity. Okay, that's an extreme example. That's big con.
Yes, Crowder will pay his own budget for his stuff unless he asks Daily Wire to do things. This is why, Sean, if you're paying attention, hey, over here, this is why Crowder keeps talking about other people. These new talents, these bedroom broadcasters, people like me who are in an echoey room using a 99-cent store microphone bought on clearance. This is why the ownership is a big deal for him. Other people who cannot afford their own productions now have to submit to the demands of Daily Wire, and Daily Wire will own the stuff that was produced by them. For example, if I had a contract with DW and I left after the 4 years, and I let them produce everything including my social media accounts, then they own all of that. Even though I left, they keep all of that. Anything I wanted to be timeless, anything I wanted to take with me, anything that was part of my likeness for those accounts or videos, they own it. I will be able to get hit by a copyright strike if I tried to re-upload anything that they felt was worth striking. If a clip went too long, or if I sing something that was now owned by them, I can't have those for myself. The point is that there's a big loss of stuff for these new talents, and companies taking stuff from them is what we are calling predatory. If it's considered socialist to let an artist own their own works when they leave a company, then I'm not sure what capitalism is other than corporatism. The idea that we're supposed to defend corporations and the ownership of media people make just because corporations put in a predatory contract is absurd. A person has the right to negotiate, just how J.K. Rowling did for Harry Potter, with her getting rich in a George Lucas way, thanks to her merchandising. Maybe these two examples are why DW wants to own everything, I don't know. Either way, it says a lot that Sean will miss the point time and time again just so he can shill for a corporation. And I don't want to say he's shilling, but what other term is there for someone who's blindly defending a corporation being predatory? Maybe shill is wrong because he doesn't have an interest to join them, but if there's no benefit to join them and he blindly defends their predatory practices anyway, I guess the next best word to call Sean is a goofball.
This is really quick before we go to super chats because you brought him up a couple times.
Yeah.
Dog nasty and need to be removed immediately from modern entertainment contracts because deep fakes. They're going to be able to take someone's perpetuity face, deep fake it to make it look real, and have it say stuff that the person doesn't agree with.
Now, full disclosure, I really like Ian.
Who the fuck is Ian? I thought that was Blake from Workaholics.
But the reason this is interesting is because Crowder is trying to tear down the system. Crowder is talking about how he's not for him. He's all about passing the torch to the next guy. He's all about lifting up the next rising star. And it becomes interesting to see what has happened with the people who were supposedly fostered under the Crowder tree.
The context of this part is that Sean doesn't like the fact that Crowder doesn't have that many people who leave his show to do better things. Crowder wants to pass the torch to someone else for his show because he wants a legacy and wants to be remembered as the dude who started a company that is famous. The idea that people are under him, then leave him, has nothing to do with passing the torch. At the very least, this is Sean looking at people taking a match and nabbing some flame from Crowder's torch. The person goes, "I'm happy with this little flame on my little match that I own." And he goes, "Aha, but you didn't pass the torch, you lied, Crowder." This is, yet again, another nothing burger from Sean. It requires an insane amount of wordplay to consider this a lie or even something bad in the slightest. Passing the torch means the company has to be passed to someone else. Not people are given something bigger than Crowder is, like he's a giving tree. It's so weird to me to see Sean focus heavily on non sequitur after non sequitur, pivot after pivot. Sean, no matter how many people hammer it into his head, cannot understand any of this. If he does, he changes the subject, he pivots to a new nothing burger, and again, the only reason I can see for this is if it's a personal thing with him, or if he's suddenly unable to think rationally anymore. Sean, did Crowder pee in a mug and splash it on you when you're at a political convention? Where's the beef? You used to look so clean-minded, and now you just look sick in the head. I'm saying this as a concerned fan, and I'm still a fan, I'm just not a fan of this position. This is why I don't give an episode number to this particular type of everything is wrong video, because I doubt I'll ever have to do one on Sean ever again. This is just a one-time thing that made my eyes pop out of my head and a turtle head poke out when I saw it. Now, there's about 10 minutes left on this video where he talks about Lauren Chen and Candace Owens, and again, nobody cares about what women have to say, so there's nothing to go over with that. In short, the entire video resulted in 0 lies detected for Crowder, and I don't even want to say Sean is lying because as a communist who always says, "It's not a lie if it was not intended, comrade." I am more than happy to say he's coming from a state of ignorance because the subject is not his typical content. He is amazing at stuff about crime and statistics because those are things you can read and see, and his intelligence in the subject that he's great at. This is the intelligence stat being used, and he's at max stat. However, when it comes to putting words together and seeing intentions of others, this requires wisdom, which his stat seems low here, and he's rolled too many ones. This is the problem with a lot of college people these days. High intelligence, low wisdom. He has information, but it takes wisdom to use it properly. The entire situation with Crowder makes Crowder a bitch, because he's being a diva and he's being catty. Also, he's somehow still struggling with bisexuality, which is a whole nother bag of worms to wiggle around. But being a bitch is not a bad thing. Daily Wire is being a hooah because they're putting money over their own dignity. Just like any harlot on the street giving suck jobs for quarters. There is no integrity to be had if they demand their celebrities to adhere to the woke advertising on YouTube and retain such connections with YouTube at such an intensity. If integrity and products were more important to Daily Wire, we'd see them making their own McDonald's or something. They'd be trying to expand conservative means farther and bring things back to how they were. What's wrong with having a Daily Wire drive-in movie theater or a roller skate diner? Why can't they start making old-fashioned soda fountains? You know, the places you sit at with the soda jerk cranking on that lever to get sodas and milkshakes? If you want to change the culture and keep things how they are, you'd bring us to a better time. I understand Daily Wire is about media, but they aren't even trying the drive-in movie theater idea. I think this is the difference between orthodox and conservative. Sure, we can say these people are religious in some way, but I have no idea what's being conserved when their idea of a kid's cartoon is having a family of chinchillas make a bunch of noise. I hate to repeat that thing, but my problem is that I love chinchillas, and that disrespect to a chinchilla concept pissed me off. It's simple, you make a chinchilla not talk, and they do slapstick humor with classical instruments playing in the background to their every movement. Ben Shapiro can play the damn violin, have him do the soundtrack. It's absolutely infuriating to see these people lie about conserving when they are making the same media as the woke are. Their model seems to be, we're going to do the same stuff the woke do, but we're going to make it boring. I'm sorry for ranting about stupid stuff Daily Wire is coming out with, but I'm not sorry for that pun. It was worth it. In short, too long, didn't watch. Sean is acting weird only for this single event. Crowder didn't lie about the stuff Sean accused him of lying about. And Sean might have a thing for chocolate pudding or fortune cookies. Again, I don't think I'll make another video about him, but I honestly don't want to do political stuff all day every day unless there's a value to it. Lindsay Ellis is a terrible feminist who's a terrible influence on reviewers, and I do reviews. It's related to me. Sean is about crime and I'm not. I'm clueless about most laws. I don't even know what I did here was legal. I also feel like I'm a bit outnumbered here because the only people who I've seen defend Crowder are people like that beautiful gun girl with the praying mantis eyes, Caitlyn Bennett, Alex Jones, teen sensation Zachary Piper, and myself. You know the situation is bad when not even Mark Dice wants to join in on the conspiracy theory. Part of me thinks that I am on the wrong side of things because I'm with Crowder instead of against him. I just don't know what I'm supposed to be against or what exactly he's done that's wrong. He denied the contract because the people couldn't afford him. That's like if I was angry at the angry video game nerd refusing to work for me at minimum wage. It's a price that's below what he's worth. And if people are angry that he doesn't like Daily Wire forcing the monetization policy, maybe the anti-YouTube Daily Wire people shouldn't even try to put an egg in the YouTube basket in that way. It's okay to be on YouTube and promote your brand, yet they're making it as if it must be deeply tied to YouTube for the next 4 years. That's not an escape plan, that's a floor plan for your new home. But the subject about contracts and products is a big thing for me since Daily Wire is trying to become a media outlet for conservatives, and we're not getting conservative media. I'm going to be very open here, Sean, please don't laugh at me for being a wimp, but I cried the other day while watching the Dick Van Dyke Show. I know it sounds funny, I didn't expect it, but I cried big baby Jordan Peterson tears. I felt like Kevin Smith after watching any movie made recently. The tears were from the thought of how the show had a moral to the story, and the moral was meaningful. It was basic, it was simple, but it had meaning behind it. The message was to conserve things, and I loved it. The show didn't have to be funny, it just had to have a decent message. Lucy didn't have to have a message, she just had to show a functional atomic family with her husband who'd stick with his wife no matter how goofy she was. I don't think even the Flintstones ever talked about divorce or being gay. All this changed in the 60s, and we're not supposed to accept that as conservatives. We're not supposed to show this new dystopian world as a conservative goal. We're supposed to show a world that we want to see and shape, because that's the order of conservation. You have to show the effort it takes to retain society, not show why it was allowed to be destroyed. This is why old cartoons were so enjoyably mundane. I can watch reruns of Tom and Jerry and Popeye any day of the week at any time. I can't do that with a show that's just a bunch of noise with little to no purpose. And this is why I support Crowder, because he's almost doing the conserving thing. Almost. His agent is gay. I really don't care for that. It seems like he was doing that for the brownie points. But it's way better than what Daily Wire is doing. Way better than what Fox News is doing. Daily Wire and Fox News are trying to be American libertarian, and Crowder is trying to actually be conservative. Looking at Crowder is like looking at these old shows. They aren't that funny. They are meant to be mundane, and they are offensive to people of now. The offensive part helps, but there needs to be more conserving from Crowder to be more conservative. And the least I can ask for is for him to stick to his principles that profit should come second. For my own business, I want to hold that as well. The principles and message comes first, profit comes second. If profit is to come at the expense of my principles, I will have a baseless belief and I might as well be woke. If I go woke, I will go broke. This is why Crowder keeps on rising even when he's not producing much, and Daily Wire seems to be stuck even though now they are full steam ahead. Conserving should mean more to a conservative. It's that simple. If you let the world progress into a transhumanist wasteland full of mutants and people who can't even reproduce anymore, you don't conserve anything. But if you think that's okay because you made a profit, then what does that say about you? Really think about who's conserving the next time someone says they are. And always ask them, what exactly are you conserving? Till next time.